Welcome to The Explainer. After the 2003 invasion, it really felt like Iraq had a shot at a new beginning. But that's not what happened. What followed was just years of instability and political stalemate. So today, we're going to dig into Zaid al-Ali's incredible book to figure out the real systemic reasons why a country with so much potential got completely stuck in a cycle of corruption.
So, how do we even begin to unpack what went wrong in Iraq after the invasion? Well, let's start with a story that, honestly, it sounds like something out of a wild movie. But it's all true, and it boils down to this one single question. How on earth does a totally fake bomb detector end up being used for years at checkpoints all across a country at war?
Okay, get this. $85 million. That is a staggering amount of money. And that's exactly how much the Iraqi government shelled out for this one device, the ADE-651. It was sold to them as this miracle gadget, the one thing that was going to keep people safe from the constant, terrifying threat of car bombs. So what was this thing really? Well, here's the kicker. A British judge, when the inventor was finally caught and put on trial, said it had a capability no better than random chance. And the guy who made it? Not a scientist, not an engineer. He was a former cop with absolutely zero relevant experience. It was just a total scam, a fraud sold for a mind-blowing profit. All right, the magic bomb detector. So what was this thing really? The device that cost a fortune and failed so spectacularly? The answer? Well, it tells you everything you need to know about the broken system that let this happen. You're not going to believe this. The ADE-651 was basically a glorified golf ball finder. No, I'm not kidding. A failed American invention for finding golf balls. It was just a plastic handle with a little antenna sticking out, no electronics, no science, nothing. It was completely and utterly useless. And yet, soldiers at checkpoints were actually taught to do this little dance with it to make it work, all while real car bombs were still going off killing people. It's just staggering. So, a legacy of failure. You can see why that fake bomb detector is such a powerful and tragic symbol for a state that had just completely fallen apart. But it didn't happen overnight. How did Iraq get here? To really get it, we need to rewind the clock and look at the decades before 2003. And when you look at this timeline, a pattern just jumps right out at you, doesn't it? For almost 100 years, power in Iraq wasn't won at the ballot box. It was taken by force. You go from a monarchy propped up by the British, to a violent military coup, to the Ba'ath Party, and then finally to Saddam Hussein's terror-phoning police state. There was just no history of democracy, no muscle memory for compromise or peaceful handovers of power. Nothing to build on. So fast forward to 2003. When the invasion happens, the state doesn't just crumble, it vanishes. Poof, gone. The army is disbanded, ministries are looted, there's nothing left. And into that total power vacuum comes this new group of leaders, exiles who are returning to Iraq, some for the first time in decades. And they're not coming back with a message of unity. Nope. They're bringing all their old rivalries and deep-seated distrust right back with them. Okay, next up. Building a broken system. Now, you'd think that writing a new constitution would be this incredible opportunity, right? A chance to finally bring everyone together. But the system that was created in 2005, it did the exact opposite. It basically poured concrete on the cracks it was supposed to fix. I mean, just look at the difference between the dream and the reality. The promise was democracy, unity, rule of law, all the good stuff. But what actually happened? The whole process was a mess. It was rushed, it was secretive, and it was all about different factions fighting for their piece of the pie. Instead of uniting people, it just pushed them further into their own corners. People ended up voting not as Iraqis, but along these rigid sectarian lines. That us versus them thinking got hardwired right into the country's political DNA. And what happened next was, well, it was a power grab. A slow, systematic takeover of everything. Under Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki, pretty much every important part of the state was brought under his control. We're talking the security services, the army, the police, the courts, even the Supreme Court. And agencies that were supposed to be independent, like the ones overseeing elections, them too. Even the central bank. The state stopped being this neutral thing that serves everyone. It became a weapon for the people in charge. Right. The human cost. Because this isn't just about abstract politics, is it? We've talked about the fake bomb detectors, the broken system, the power grabs, but what did all of that actually feel like for a regular person just trying to live their life in Iraq? Let's just look at the money for a second, because money shows you what really matters. Back in 2012, Iraq was swimming in oil money, one of the top producers in the world. So where did that money go? Well, the budget for defense was almost $15 billion. The budget for electricity? Not even $6 billion. For health? Under $5 billion. Just think about that. People were living with constant power cuts and a failing healthcare system, while the government was spending 3 times more on defense, an army that was using fake bomb detectors. It just makes no sense. And then there's the story of one man, called Bulos in the book, but his story speaks for thousands. This guy was a brilliant law professor at Baghdad University. He was kidnapped, tortured, and he managed to escape to Australia. And now, he's a manual laborer. Think of that loss. Iraq's best and brightest, the doctors, the engineers, the professors, they were hunted down, killed, or forced to run for their lives. It was a massive, catastrophic brain drain, right when the country needed those minds the most. So what about the people who stayed and worked for the state? You're going to love this. One study actually calculated the average amount of time a government employee actually worked each day. The number? 17 minutes. Just 17 minutes. See, the government had become this gigantic jobs program, a way to buy loyalty by giving people a paycheck. But there wasn't any real work to do. So you had this massive, bloated bureaucracy that didn't actually do anything. The offices were often just empty. So you add all of this up, and you get what the author, Zaid al-Ali, calls Iraq's frozen republic, a state that's just stuck in a permanent state of paralysis. The big idea to fix all this division was something called a government of national unity. And, on paper, it sounds pretty good. Let's get all the major political groups in government together, right? Let's be inclusive. But in practice, it was a recipe for disaster. It basically created a system where nothing could ever get done. Why? Because everyone got a seat at the table, which meant everyone got their slice of the pie, and everyone got a veto. It was designed for gridlock. And the result of that? A system with zero accountability. Absolutely none. Think about it. If a minister is totally incompetent or even corrupt, you can't fire them. Why not? Because they're not there because they're good at their job. They're there to represent their political party. So the parties end up acting like these protected mafias. They can do whatever they want, and there are no consequences. Meanwhile, the government itself is just frozen, stuck, unable to move forward. But here's the thing. The story doesn't end on a note of total despair. The author makes it really clear that the Iraqi people are incredibly resilient. They haven't given up. They keep demanding something better. And that really leaves us with a big lingering question, doesn't it? For a country and a people with so much strength and potential, what is it going to take to finally break this devastating political cycle of corruption and division?